Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the TT Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. It's the fourth week of July. Oh my goodness. And this week has started out with a bang. This month is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have addressed rejection, the effects of incarceration on families, overcoming hurtful legacies. And when I tell you, depending on your vantage point, Sunday was definitely a time of a lot of different emotions. It might have been anxiety, disappointment, confusion, sadness, anger, relief, as the world learned that Joe Biden would not be continuing to run for president. So it was reminiscent to me of the episode I did after Simone Biles opted not to compete in the 2020 Olympics due to her mental health. Now, on one hand, she received a lot of support and praise from people. Focus on your mental wellness. It's very important for athletes to take good care of themselves. And on the other end, there was absolute vitriol and backlash because people were like, oh, you are a quitter. This is supposed to be tough. You're weak. And you are just a disgrace and a disappointment to people. And so I think it is apropos, if you will, that today in this episode I discuss preparing for transition, knowing when to let go. So, as I said, this week has probably been already a whirlwind for people. But I think it is really important for us to understand sometimes why we push ourselves to stay in things or why it's hard for us to let go. And just that decision making process of when to know if it's right for you to make a transition, particularly in work, in your life. Now, we know that there are a lot of factors that go into making that decision. That decision does not come lightly to anyone, whether that is retirement, thinking about changing jobs, thinking about starting a new business venture, taking leave when you need to take care of yourself, even really thinking about whether or not you want to go into the workforce. Maybe you have not been in the workforce for a while and you're really trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do with myself? So there are a lot of things that I think we should really discuss with regard to what that decision making process could look like. And again, as I always tell you, this list is not exhaustive by any means, but I do think it's a good place for you to start as you're really kind of thinking about what's your next. So a lot of people, of course, are looking at the finances. Can I afford to retire? Can I afford to leave this job and start another job? A lot of times people will talk about lateral moves where like, hey, this isn't going to actually give me any more money or allow me to necessarily be able to address some of the financial challenges I have, but it'll set me up in the long run to be able to do that. And so being able to really think about, do I take that job or not, or do I stay here in this job? I think also just kind of, can I afford to start a new job venture? And so for some people, whether that is you wanting to be an entrepreneur or you're wanting to transition, I hear a lot of people, particularly in the trucking industry, talk about leaving one company and getting their own truck or going between different companies that have different benefits. And of course, for people who are in positions where maybe you've been in a job really long, and so you know that job really well, and the thought of transitioning to another job, you think like, can I handle that? Am I qualified for that? Thinking about all of the other requirements you may have in your life. You may have young children, you might be a spouse. You may have pets that you need to consider and making sure that they're taken care of and not at home long hours by themselves. Thinking about remote work versus going in to the office, like so many different things can play a part in that. And so we'll end up staying in jobs because we really don't feel like we're comfortable enough to be able to make that transition, that move. Even if it is something like, hey, I can do this short term, try to get myself in another position, but we don't have the confidence for a variety of reasons and thinking about whether or not we should take an option and definitely whether or not we can afford to retire. Now we're at a point where a lot of jobs, it used to be when I was growing up, that people got pensions. So you would work your 20, 25, 30 years, whatever it was, you could retire and you would receive a pension. And so for a lot of people, that was a good supplement to their income, particularly if they weren't at an age yet to withdraw, to be drawing Social Security. But also, like, it couples with Social Security, so that I feel like I'm making about what I was making before I left my job. And so it is an option financially that will work for me. Now we're in situations where a lot of people don't necessarily have pensions. Some places have retirement. However, it's about what you put into your retirement. You don't necessarily have employer matching, which can get that retirement up. And so a lot of people are looking like, my retirement isn't that well funded. And then there are some jobs that don't have retirement at all. And so as I think about a lot of the entrepreneurs out there, people who are in the hair care industry, people who may be in that self trucking industry, right? So you're thinking about like, hey, I'm not actually putting any money into retirement because I don't naturally have a retirement set up as a part of the job because I'm self-employed, right? And so you would have to put some things in place to have a retirement. And I think a lot of times as business owners, we don't necessarily put as much in retirement as a job would kind of motivate us to put in, and particularly with that matching. And so a lot of people are in positions where they necessarily can't afford to retire, or afford to transition in any way because they don't have the financial means to be able to do so. We also have a lot of social connections, I think, that can happen when we're working. And so most people will tell you their friend group, if they're not friends they already had from growing up, or some from, college and other, military experiences, like most of them are from work. And so as we start to connect with people, who are the people we spend the most time with? Our coworkers. Now, I know some of you are anti coworker relationships. Like, I don't talk to them people outside of work. But there are people who definitely have met some good friends through work. And so sometimes there's that concern of, if I'm not going to work, what would I be doing? And a lot of people will tell you the reason why they worked almost to the age of death is because they were like, what will I do if I'm not working? And so that loneliness and that isolation can set in, because particularly if you don't have family near you, what would be your social context if you weren't working? Then there are people that are depending on us. There are pets that are depending on us. And sometimes we just don't feel like we're in a position to be able to transition, to be able to leave a job, to be able to retire because we're responsible for all of these people. There are people's opinions of us, as we started out this episode talking about, like, oh, you're a quitter. That's not how you were raised. You stay in something until the very end. The loyalty piece of us. And I think when you have that strong work ethic, and this is also why it's kind of difficult for us to transition too, because in this era now of where there's a lot of places that are understaffed, or people may be calling out, and so we don't have enough coverage. I feel responsible for making sure that everything is being taken care of. So I also don't feel like I can leave, because what's going to happen when I leave? And so that is when that loyalty and that feeling of over responsibility for things, as I talk about over functioning sometimes so that people under function, then now I feel like I'm kind of trapped, like I have to do this, because really it's gotten tied into my identity. And so for a lot of people, that's what work has become for them. It has become a part of their identity. And so to leave that would mean I have this void in this sense of, what is my purpose and what am I here to do if I'm not in this capacity, which is, I think, why a lot of people struggle when they're unemployed, is because they feel like they're not doing anything of value. Then let us not forget our favorite, pride. Sometimes we're very prideful. And so in our pride, we're like, I got this. I'm not leaving this. I'm going to stay in this. You're not going to be able to get me out of here. I do what I want to do. I'm taking care of things. Y'all can't handle it, right? And so sometimes that hubris, if you will, interferes with our ability to, one, be able to recognize when it's time for us to transition. And two, I think also that we have a lack of awareness about how we're impacting other people and how being impacted as well. So that speaks to, sometimes we don't recognize our limits. And I know a lot of us think we're limitless, but you have limits. And as you age and you grow and you have different medical needs, you have different mental health needs, your family has different needs, your pets have different needs, all of these things that are going on around you, then that also changes your ability to be able to set particular boundaries in the area, and also your ability to be able to think quickly, to be able to problem solve, conflict resolution, personnel issues. Like sometimes we find ourselves just getting more and more frustrated with people. Like I don't remember being this frustrated a few years ago because there are other things that are at play now that I'm not considering that are affecting how I'm showing up. And so a lot of times we're kind of the last to know, if you will, and people are like, no, you done got real cranky. And you're not recognizing how you're coming across because of some of these other things that you're dealing with and how work has changed for you in terms of your ability to be able to do it and do it successfully. Like sometimes you're in a field that wears on you, it kind of chips away on you over time. And so that fatigue that we can get, that burnout that we can get, work becomes stressful at times. It may be that this didn't affect me when I was younger, but it's affecting me different. Like physically, I'm not able to do things in the same way that I was able to do. Mentally, I'm not able to do things in the same way that I was able to do. And things are changing in a direction that maybe not even comfortable for me anymore. And sometimes we're in positions and our training kind of gets outdated. So now I'm realizing I have more to learn than actually what I know and the expertise that I had when I came into the field. And I think that not understanding the cost of how work affects us is another reason why people stay in jobs as long as they do, because they don't understand, like, hey, what you're sacrificing in order to stay here, working those long hours, continuing to push through and get up and go to work when you really need to be taking care of your physical health. Some people are in environments where they're working and they don't get a chance to really have off days. And so when are you supposed to go to the doctor and take care of things? And what if you don't have insurance, right? So you don't even have the benefits to be able to go and see a professional. So a lot of people are not taking care of themselves in order to stay on a job. And so I think a lot of times for us, there are kind of the double-edged sword, if you will, of working. Like there's benefits to it, but there can also be costs, and sometimes those costs get to be really high. So let's talk about one, understanding that at some point in your life, you're going to have to transition out of your job. At some point in your life, you're not going to be able to continue to do what you're doing presently. Now, that may be because you retire. That may be, and the retirement may not be because you're pushed out. It may be because you're like, you know what, I've done what I came to do, and I'm going to transition. I see a lot of business owners sell their practices, sell their businesses to people. They turn the reins over, if you will, to some people who can continue the work. They want to do other things. And this is, again, that shift in perspective and purpose. And so you recognize that this isn't the work that I'm called to do anymore. So let me transition it to somebody who is called to do it. But sometimes that transition comes from health reasons. So I may not be at a place where I can continue to work. And a lot of people are ill prepared because the thing is, you don't know what may happen in your life. Oh, I'm healthy now, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to stay healthy. A lot of times people are dealing with chronic illnesses. Cancer can really change your ability to be able to work. You can have a significant depressive episode, a loss, a grief episode that can really affect you. Unfortunately, losing a spouse, losing a child, those kind of things can have a significant impact on your ability to show up and work. Sometimes we're in a place of needing transition because, like, we are having GI issues, we're having heart issues, we're having mobility issues, we've got brain fog. So there are a lot of different reasons why things can shift in a way that we would maybe need to transition, even if it's temporary and it takes some time away from work. Maybe it's not long term. I need to, for those of you that have the ability to have leave from work, FMLA or some other options, to be able to take some of that time away or work in a different capacity short term while you're managing things. What if you get injured on the job and you're not able to function in the same capacity? And so, but Georgia is at will state, and in a lot of places, what they'll say to you is, we'll try to make reasonable accommodations for you to be able to transition you into something that's lighter duty work or something that is more amenable to whatever you're experiencing with regard to the limitations and restrictions your doctor may have placed on you. But that is not something that they're required to do per se. So if I don't have it, i.e., I don't have to create something for you if there's not anything available. And so that can end up being a transition because you're not able to work in any place. There's not an availability position, if you will, for you to be able to work that is going to be able to be something that your accommodations can allot for. And so maybe that forced transition. Sometimes we are in positions where there is a change in the job status. We see that a good bit in corporations. So somebody might buy the corporation, it might get consolidated, it might phase out certain aspects of it. And so they're laying off people, they're downsizing. And so it may be a transition that's forced in that way, right? And so what we want to do is we want to be able to prepare for those transitions. Now, I do absolutely understand that some of the things that I'm going to say are easier said than done, right? Because most of us are not able to abide by that model of I live on 50% of my income. I put 20% in savings, and then 30% is kind of my, free to do what I want to be able to do, vacation, all the good stuff, money, right? Like most of us are not in that place. And some people save the 30, some people save the 20, it just depends. But anyway, I know that a lot of us are not in that position. Like a lot of people are living check to check. And so it is very difficult to even have a savings. It can be very difficult to be able to have money in a retirement account. It can be very difficult to be able to have investments and multiple streams of income. But those are some of the things that can be helpful in preparing for that inevitable transition that's going to occur in your life. And we first want to start with your budget. And I do think all of us probably do some unnecessary spending. Now, I know some budgets are tighter than other, and unnecessary might be a couple of dollars for some people and $2,000 for others. But I think it's always important for us to take a look at that budget. Do I have things on here that I'm paying for that I'm not really using or not using to the extent to justify continuing to pay for them? We talk a lot about these streaming services. We talk a lot about things you signed up for at various points in your life and never canceled. Some of y'all got gym memberships right now that you have not used in 3 years, and just haven't taken the time to cancel it because you keep saying I'm gonna get back to the gym. You haven't been back in 3 years. You haven't been back in 3 years. Gonna let that gym membership go, right? Sometimes we're paying for extra things insurance wise that we don't necessarily need. Now, sometimes we're not paying for stuff that we do need, right? But anyway, taking a look at that budget is really important. That's a crucial step in preparing for a transition. Excuse me. Yeah, no, I'm good for choking on my saliva. But anyway, so then the next piece of that is speaking with some type of financial planner because you want to think long term. We have our short-term goals and we have our long-term goals. And if you're thinking like, hey, at some point I'm going to have a transition, whether that's transitioning to a different job or retirement or taking some time off for health reasons, then I need to make sure I have some things in place that are going to allow me to be able to do that a little seamlessly. So as I talk to that financial planner, do I have short-term disability set up? Do I have long-term disability set up? And even though they aren't going to be at the same level as your paycheck, they give you a portion, right? And so we know that a portion is better than nothing, particularly if I don't necessarily have the savings that I need. Now, sometimes we know we're going to need a medical procedure and we have time to be able to save up. I know some of y'all have pushed off getting those knees and hips and shoulders operated on because you've like, I don't want to have to take that time off for that recovery. But we know that there's only so long that you're going to be able to go before, again, here's one of those cost things where you're going to be hurting all the time and you're going to cause more damage. And you're going to end up causing damage to other parts of your body because you're trying to compensate for that area that you haven't had that surgery on. And so being able to talk to that financial planner to plan out, okay, I know I want to have this surgery in a year. What do I need to be doing in order for me to be able to have those months of recovery time and doing my physical therapy, and being on those restrictions before I'm able to come back to work? Right. And so once you have kind of that budget, you've talked to that financial planner, it allows you also to be able to look and see where the deficit is. Right. Sometimes it's like I am literally just making enough to cover my expenses. If anything happens, I don't have any extra. And so then it may be time to really look at, okay, are there some ways that I can invest, even small amounts? I think a lot of times people think they have to have thousands and thousands of dollars to invest. You don't. You start small and you can build. And so that investment option is something that would be able to allow you to have some income in the event of a transition the multiple streams of income. I know we hear that all the time, having passive income. What can I be doing that's making money and I don't have to work to make the money, right? And that might be where that financial planner is able to help you consider some options that might be viable to you because everybody's a little different. And I don't want you ending up in some of these multi-marketing kinds of adventures when that's not a good fit for you, right? So you always want to make an informed decision about what's the best option for you. For some people that works really well, but for other people they're like, I can't be a part of a travel agent group because I am not going to make the time to do that. I don't have those kind of connections with people to be able to sell these products to, and so that's not going to end up benefiting me. Right. So that's why it's important for you to have that consultation to know what options are that could work for you. It may also be important for you to really look at housing. Housing is one of our most expensive costs that we're paying into, whether it's your mortgage or your rent. And so it may be looking at, okay, roommates and downsizing and moving in with folks, right? So being able to make some adjustments. And I know a lot of us are like, I want my space, I like my privacy. And I think we have to be very open with regard to what are some things that I may need in this transitional period that may not be long term, but particularly if I have to have a surgery or I've got some significant health issues and I live by myself, it's going to be very important that I have somebody with me to be able to assist me in this process. And so that might be an opportunity to really think about looking at those housing options. Do I need to downsize? I have a home. It's big. I'm trying to maintain it. I'm having a hard time doing that. It's becoming a burden to me. I'm not able to upkeep it in the way that it needs to be upkept, right? And then I want to maybe think about downsizing and what are some of my options. And there's a lot of things to factor into that. And again, I absolutely encourage you to make sure that you have people who you're speaking to about this that you trust. Those financial planners, a banker, an investment officer, people who are not trying to sell you a product, but absolutely are going to help you strategize and figure out what's the best plan for you. And the same is true with your health, right? So you making sure that you're working with your mental health providers. Come on, plug for therapy. Your medical providers in terms of, okay, let me look at my health. Let me look at my risk factors. Let me really think about what are some things that I can do to offset me having some health challenges? Because sometimes we can make some changes now that can have a positive impact on us in 10 years. And I know that, y'all are each struggling with something. All of us have our things, whether it's our food or we're drinking, smoking, whatever it may be. But really taking a look at the cost again, and that's that cost benefit ratio of some of my behaviors and how they might potentially set me up to have problems in the future when I can maybe walk some things back, make some changes, some gradual changes in order for me to be prepared. And this is what I like about transitions is that you can make a gradual plan for transition. It doesn't have to be so abrupt. But again, that's where this planning is really important for us. And a lot of times we don't plan for transitions, one, because we don't really have to want to deal with it. And two, because we're in this mindset of I'm healthy and I'm good and I'm fine. And I'm not really thinking about what the future may hold. And that's why a lot of times we don't have wheels. We don't have advanced directives in place, and we don't have the retirement options in place because we're thinking about the now and maybe we only feel like financially we can manage the now, but I guarantee you that you have the capacity to be able to manage the future as well. And there are a lot of free resources. I know I plug Goodwill a lot, but they are an outstanding option to be able to address some of these things and get you on the right page. Particularly if for those of you that you're behind in your taxes, you haven't paid your taxes for a few years, and that's what's kind of prompting you to keep working. And you're like, oh, I got to get a handle on these taxes. I owe this money, right? So making sure you have that plan, being able to consult with someone and recognize like over time I can chip away at this, but also I can set up habits so I'm not continuing to be in this situation where I'm 2 years behind paying my taxes. That was one of the things my dad really struggled with and got to a point of garnishment for him. And then they also garnished my mom as his wife. So you want to avoid those things by making better financial decisions and getting that consultation. That was a long time ago. And so I don't think people necessarily had as much available to them as they do now, but you have a lot of resources available to you now. So we're going to take advantage of that. And I do want to end with making sure that in this preparation of transition period that we also focus on our self-care. And I do think that a lot of times we don't take the time and really evaluate our wellness. I've talked to you all about those 8 wellness dimensions: social and mental and physical and financial and environmental, all the good stuff, vocational, right? But a lot of times we are, particularly in our occupational health, not really examining our wellness. What are the things that positively and negatively impact my health and wellness that could affect my potential to work and may also be indicative of an upcoming transition? And sometimes we have a lot of negative self talk and a lot of fears that keep us kind of powerless and we don't move. As we're talking about, like sometimes we are in that job that's comfortable. I know how to do it, I know what to expect, but it's not actually paying for the things in the way that it needs to. And it's actually not necessarily having the best impact on my health because I'm not able to do the things that I really need to do because I'm kind of trapped in this place, but I'm keeping myself trapped. But it is because I'm afraid to be able to take a step out and do something different, right? We always say the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. And I will often counter by saying it's not the devil. So how about we get out and think about what our options are and not box ourselves in because we're fearful of what could be out there, because the could be could also be positive as well. So you want to take a look at your day and see where you're spending the majority of your time. If you are unbalanced in the amount of hours that you're working your job and thinking about, well, am I doing that to myself because I'm having a hard time delegating and that's why I can't leave because I feel like if things will fall apart and it won't get done, right? And I'm not giving people opportunities to be able to step up and take these roles and responsibilities. And again, some of that could be my pride, and some of that could be my sense of purpose. And I'm afraid of letting those things go because then I won't think I have any value. But there are a lot better ways, a lot healthier ways to have more balance. And so sometimes in this period of transition, what we need to do is figure out what life outside of this work might look like, right? And that might be volunteering, that may be being more active in your faith-based organization, that might be connecting more socially. So there are a lot of different ways that you can really look at what does balance look like for me, or what do I want to get balance to look more like in this period of preparing for a transition. And I do think all of us need to really ask ourselves the question, what's going to be my stopping point? When will I know that I'm not okay? I joke with one of my colleagues. I'm like, hey, when I get to this point, look me look me straight in my eyes, put your hands on my shoulders, square me up, and say, remember we had this conversation about when it was time for you to move on and let this go? We're here. Because I need sometimes for other people to be able to see the things that I can't see when I'm in it. So, who are the people in your life that are going to hold you accountable to when you're not okay? Who you are going to be able to have those tough conversations with, who you're going to be able to hear that feedback, who you're going to be able, when they remind you that you said to them, hey, when this time came, we said we would talk about it and you would be able to hear me through this and recognize the fear that you may have in leaving this, but that there is a life outside of this and there is a healthy life for you outside of this, right? Because we're talking about tough decisions when it comes to taking care of ourselves and being able to know when to let go. I think we're concerned about how people will see us, and we're concerned about what we're going to do outside of this work environment, or outside of whatever this identity that we have created around the work that we do. And so it's important for us to have safe spaces to be able to process through that as we're making those tough decisions. And you all know that it is not anything that is beyond what therapy can do for you. I was just talking Sunday about that a lot of people have misperceptions about therapy. Therapy is strategy focused, right? So we're trying to encourage and empower people to problem solve effectively, consider all of the potential outcomes and what is going to be the healthiest choice that they can make. Because you can only make the best choice that you can make in a given moment with the information that you have available to you at that time. And so sometimes that therapist is going to be the one that helps you be able to evaluate your wellness and determine what positively and negatively impacts your wellness and what negative self-talk that you're having and your fears and your difficulty being able to have balance and take those vacations and take those breaks and being able to step away and being able to have a transition plan and also being able to make those tough decisions of when it's time for you to let go. So, therapy can be that accountability for you to help you with your self care, particularly since that's an area where a lot of us struggle. So, what do I want to end by saying? That there are going to be transitions in life. That is a guarantee. And also that you can prepare for those transitions so that you have an easier time. It's always challenging, but an easier time being able to manage all of the effects of that transition. Preparation and prevention is always going to be best. All right. Take good care of you and be well.